on Sirius XM Canada Talks Channel 167. Staring at a picture of Prime Minister Trudeau to be inspired. Big Canadian stories and cities will get their attention. Hard to find stories less talked about towns will have the spotlight too. And boy, I'm just getting lost in Trudeau's eyes. Anyway, Canada Now with Jeff Sam at 10 a.m. to noon Eastern weekdays starting Monday on Sirius XM Canada Talks Channel 167. It's not a political party thing. I felt the same way about Mulroney.
Hot and dangerous. If you're one of us, then roll with us. Cause we make the hipsters fall in love when we got our hot pants on and up. And yes, of course we does. We run in this town just like a club.
This is Ward and Howe on Canada Talks. Let's get into hour number 3.
All right. Joining us now. You know what? This is so perfect because...
She reminds you of Kesha.
No. The Women's March happened all over the world this past weekend. And it's a good time. It's always a good time, but especially right now, a good time to be talking about women in different businesses, different industries. Mm-hmm. And the woman we're going to talk to now can remember a time when women were kind of a new and rare thing in the advertising world because it wasn't that long ago.
Because it was yesterday?
Yeah. My saying that makes it sound like we're talking about the way back good old days. And it's not. It's actually, despite the fact that advertising is one of the oldest industries in the world, women have only been really a part of it for a few decades now, all over the world, including right here at home. She is a globally recognized creative director, writer, and speaker, and was also a mentor, full disclosure, to my wife. Please welcome Karen Howe.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. It's good to see you. Full disclosure, Karen and I have met before. We know each other. Hi.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Glad to be talking about women in advertising. There's not many to talk about.
It's interesting.
And I think that surprises people.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's interesting how many. First of all, you know, with the Women's Marches on the weekend, it was interesting to see how many both men and women go, women are fine.
So true.
And,
so true.
And it's like, well, yeah, we're fine, I guess, but I don't think people realize how many male-dominated industries there still are, and how many times as a woman you have to go, no. I have I have an opinion and I have a place here.
Yeah, it's some pretty funny math. You know, in advertising, 85% of the purchase decisions are actually made by women. But in my end of it, I'm a creative director. Only 3% of the creative directors. So the people actually making the advertising you're seeing out there, it's only 3% of them is made by women.
Yeah, there's a common thing that comes up with men complaining about when it comes to complaining about certain ads or whatever. And I heard a bunch of guys talking about, well, you know what? Every time I see an ad that features a man in it, he's a buffoon, and the mom or the mother has to come along and show him how to do something as basic as mop the floor. And I say, do you know that those ads are written by men? That 9 times out of 10, an ad that shows a man as a buffoon is written by a man.
It's true. So go complain to the men for a change. Perfect. Yeah. Great parallel.
Yeah.
Karen, can you explain for the average person, what is a creative director? What does that mean?
They're literally responsible for any of the advertising being done out of an agency. They're responsible for all the creative products. So they oversee a team of art directors and writers who actually produce the ideas.
Okay. I didn't really know what it was.
It's the Don Draper. We're the Don Drapers of the world. That's the best metaphor going.
Right.
Thank God that Mad Men came along so people now can finally understand what the roles are.
So you just take Don Draper and you put some breasts on him and you've got the whole package there. That's it. That's what I do.
That's why I have to, whenever someone says, what does your wife do? I say she works in advertising. And they go, oh, really? Like what? I have to go, okay, she's Pete Campbell.
It's true. I mean, I do thank God for Mad Men because it has given everybody a point of reference. Nobody knew what we were doing, especially if you're an art director. It's like, do you draw the ads? No. Do you photograph them? Not really. Do you render the type? Not really. So it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
I've not seen Mad Men, so my only frame of reference is the movie Picture Perfect, starring Jennifer Aniston, which no one likes but me. But here's what I know. Gouldens, number 2, and that ain't bad.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when advertising has come up in movies or entertainment, it seems that what people think it is copywriters. I think probably everyone thinks the average person, when you say advertising, they think everyone's a copywriter, essentially.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But it really is the magic combination of the two, because the art director is in charge of all the visuals, anything that is a picture or the film or the video, and the writer's responsible for the words. But together they come up with the idea. So it really is a symbiotic relationship. It's important. They're both important.
So with only 3% of creative directors being women, what was your ascent in the industry like? And why didn't at some point you go, oh, that's a dude job?
I look back on my career and realize how much sexism I was facing, but I actually didn't realize it in real time because I just didn't care. All I cared about was doing great work. And when I look back on a few things, I realize now that it wasn't so great. I had, at one point, I was at an agency. I'd been there for years, won a ton of awards, built my client relationships. And I got told, we really can't see you as a creative director because, you're probably going to have babies and it's a pretty big job. At the time I went, well, okay, I guess that makes sense. But now I look back and go, what was I thinking? It's crazy.
Did you have babiys?
Yes, I did. But
yet you still do the big job.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Look at
Shocking.
you.
I know. Well, I had a client once who was a beer client, and he had me taken off the account. I'd only been on it for a little bit of time, and he said, chicks just don't get beer. And I know. We love beer.
Oh my God, I love dudes, right?
I know.
Just, that's the best thing.
Well, yeah, and then
chicks just don't get beer, man.
I know. And then we went, what he never knew is I went on with my family to found Cameron's Brewing Company. So, yeah, I don't know beer. I only owned a microbrewery. So it was so ironic to me.
That is, every now and again, even if a guy is sexist, sometimes they still do it. They say it in a way that is so funny that I'm like, oh, I hate you, but I kind of love you. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous.
Wasn't that like how mansplaining started? Guys trying to appear not sexist while being wildly sexist?
No, that's not what mansplaining is. Mansplaining is no matter. Okay, so mansplaining is Karen is a creative director.
Right.
It's another creative director going, Karen, here's what a creative director does, okay? Because she can't understand it. She's a woman. So it's a man telling a woman who knows something better than he does what that thing is.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I just kind of always assumed it was still this latent sexism. It was still this idea of, I'm not really sexist, but now I'm getting ready to make assumptions because I'm sexist. Right. I don't
think the assumption there is that the guy isn't sexist. Like, it's not that he's doing it on purpose, but whether he's sexist or not kind of has nothing to do with it.
No, I don't think they realize I don't think they think they are.
I think you're right. It's when they start using the one syllable words it gets really annoying, Yeah. No, I think it's really undeliberate at times. But you know what? I think it just a lot of times comes from a place of insecurity. And the cool thing is there's a ton of really smart, great guys out there that don't fall into that trap. So it's I think times are changing. Not fast enough, not far enough, but we're on the right path.
Right.
For sure.
And so how, now you say in retrospect, you realize like, oh, wow, that was super. He never should have said that. Or do you have a better real-time understanding when these situations are happening? Or do you find they are happening less? Or do you feel like in 10 years you're going to look back and go, oh, wait a minute.
Okay, so I think the difference is how it plays out. 15 years ago, I had a pitch. It was a really big new business pitch, and it was for a client in a category I knew a ton about. I'd worked on it for a decade. It was telecommunications. And I really should have been a part of that pitch. I had a new boss who was male, didn't want me. I guess he felt threatened by me, didn't want me there. Finally, the pitch consultant came in and said, we're looking at a room full of women out there. That's who the client is. We need some people that reflect that category. So he marched into my room, the creative director, and goes, come on, Howe, get in the boardroom. We need some boobs in there. Now I don't think it would have been expressed that way. Actually, I use the nice word because I know we can't use the bad words to express this story. But now I think someone would have come in and said, we need someone there more reflective of our target group. So it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still kind of, but it's expressed in a different way. So
it's not as blatant.
It's not as blatant. There's the word. There's the word I seek. Not as blatant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you also do a lot of writing, a lot of blogging, and talking about the industry. What is advertising's other dirty little secret?
Well, I think the other thing that is we're mini Hollywood, and with it comes some wonderful things, and with it comes with some freight that isn't so great. And that is ageism is a big problem in our business. One of the directors I've worked with around town says, he said, basically you hit 56 and you're in the killing fields. He said, you're done. And it's really true. There is, it's considered to be a young man's game, and or young person's game, and I think you lose some value at a certain point. In other businesses like law, every year, every decade, you are more valuable. It kind of works the other way sometimes in advertising.
Al and I are both comedians, and it's an interesting thing looking at the way show business, even the stand-up comedy industry, caters, and people are always like, cater to those young people, cater to that, which is hilarious because besides doing college shows, comedy clubs, it's almost always I'm speaking to people over 35. There are some groups that are going to be smaller. There's going to be some audiences where it's going to be more mixed and all that. But I've always found that funny that, if it comes to TV, they're like, get that 18 to 49, when it seems more and more when I go out and do live shows, everyone's 35 to 60. And it's like that's the target audience live. And yet when it comes to TV, they're going to try to get younger people. And I've always thought I don't understand this focus of younger when I go, I'm seeing all the time, whether it's Zoomer or other, some of the shows. CBS is a good example that older audiences are out there and they've got the cash.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, and you hit it, is there's where the cash is. So I don't understand the focus, not certainly including them in our focus of whatever the heck we're talking about. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, young people don't have money.
No.
I've had money.
That's why I don't see them at the
First
clubs.
of all, I barely have any money, but I have a little bit of money, and I've had it for half a minute.
It's true.
Like, I honestly, before I was 35, I literally had $0. I had negative. So it's interesting to me that advertising would be like, listen, let's get some young people in here. Why?
Yeah, I think.
What are they paying for?
There's a lot of great things they bring to the equation, but I think a really great creative department has a balance of both.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we can talk to experiences that people that are 25 haven't experienced yet. Mm-hmm. And sure, they can talk about stuff I can't, but I think the perfect balance, sweet spot is a little bit of both would be great.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how many it's one or the other, right? You're saying in law, the longer you're in it, the more you know, the better you are. But fresh perspective is always great. Like, it's interesting to me that as a society, we can't embrace everybody. We're either going, youth is where it's at, or you've got to have the experience. And more industries aren't going, well, what if we just put a bunch of people in a room?
You see, I have this dream of starting this agency filled with postmenopausal women, because I got to tell you, nobody has to go home and rush and get the kids, picked up from the daycare, and nobody's going on maternity leave. There's some great things about it, or at least some of that will be good,
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's such a interesting thing to me because it seems that people go crazy trying to get the younger this and that, and there's times when I go, the only thing I would ever go to a 25-year-old and ask their advice on is sneakers.
They do know their way around sneakers. It's true.
And
Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat.
Maybe
there's a lot of reasons to go to the young people.
I spent a lot of time.
Brett just shook his head, but Brett, you're 108 years old in a young person's body. So yes, I'm not. I don't need. I'm going to ask Cassandra about Snapchat.
Yeah, little trends like that, or what tech devices do younger people like and things like that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
but I mean,
it's true. The horrifying moment where you have to go to your kid and say, "How do I retweet this Twitter or this twit thing, this Twittage thing?"
Yeah,
it's not good.
What, with technology, so many industries have changed. Has there been a lot of changing in advertising?
Oh, yeah, tons. It's funny because there's with the social platforms, I feel like the one's invented probably every 7 minutes. So to stay on top of that is really challenging. But what I love about it is it gives you a million new platforms to talk about your message creatively. It's fantastic.
Right. It stresses me out.
Oh, yeah.
I only have to advertise me on the most basic level, and even I'm like, I don't know if my brand is consistent across all my platforms.
Here we are self-branding. That's right. You have to make sure your platforms line up.
It's very hard.
Things our parents never had to worry about, right?
Yeah.
But you touch on something interesting about ignoring the spending power of older people, and I don't mean old people, but older people. In our industry, in show business, there's such a focus, especially with women, young, stay young, be as young, look as young as possible, even radio hosts, and people don't even see us. So and I've always found that so interesting because it actually is a more recent thing. Because if you look back to entertainment say in the 40s, the 50s, even the 60s, people were going for middle-aged audiences. They wanted that. It seemed that that's where the spending power was. Of course, then with the 60s, the baby boomers especially, then people started to focus on teenagers, which is a term that didn't even come to existence until 50 years ago. Teenager was only a term that came out of around 1955, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's an interesting thing that there was a time when it was okay, for entertainers to be the same age as their audience.
Yeah, the switch is definitely in. Now the teens hold all the cards.
Yeah.
It's really annoying.
Listener Patty has a great tweet. She says, the 3% thing explains the idea that women are forever worried about having soft armpits and why it is a product feature.
Oh, man.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
Dove
Oh, man.
and all that kind of stuff. They're like, don't you want... Which I've never felt like my armpits were... If anything, they're very soft. They don't do anything. They're always protected by your arm. It's very soft skin under there.
It's as an armpit should be.
Yeah.
And because yours is, that's why you're doing well in this business.
I never thought of that before.
I know.
And so when she just tweeted it, it made me laugh because it is true. Do you ever get frustrated by having to sell people, like having to create a campaign and in your mind you're going, okay, no one cares about soft armpits, but they want to feature soft armpits, so we're doing that.
Yeah, you occasionally run across a product where you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to have to drink the water here and try and believe it. But, most of the time, I think we're selling stuff that's relevant, that actually fixes stuff or changes people's lives or makes them feel better. But that's, the moment in advertising when you have to sell your soul, when you're worried about those soft armpits. How are we packaging that up,
Is there a particular product that is hardest to sell? Like I've always heard that every ad agency wants a car, right? You want to represent a car company at some point. Is there a product where you're like,
Why? Because cars are easy or hard?
it's considered prestigious if a car company wants to use you as the advertising agency?
Oh, okay.
You know what? One I think everybody lusts after, but is really tough, is the beer category.
Yeah.
It really is a sea of sameness. So to try and find something that holds that beer different from another one is really, really challenging. There's just a million brands out there. So as much as we lust after it, I mean, I've had the good luck to work on Heineken and Dos Equis, which are two wonderful brands. But a lot of times it's hard to find a distinguishing factor for a brand. And it's tough, but they got great budgets. So
Why did Dos Equis break up with the most interesting man in the world?
Oh, that just made me so sad.
Was
because
it ageism?
I loved his beard. You see, now there's one where I thought that was amazing. People say there's this, you can't use a spokesman that's older than the target group. He was a much-loved target group. So,
Yeah.
And I feel like from what I can read in the press, there is some real sense of loss for him. I'll be curious to see if they end up bringing him back, like they did with the Kokanee guy. They ditched him, and they ended up bringing him back. He was
That's
so
right.
loved. Yeah. So
Was that the park ranger?
yeah, it was a park ranger.
Yeah.
These
He was
long-term
very
properties,
funny.
yeah, sometimes they're just so loved. And I think sometimes the advertiser themselves gets tired of them and goes, okay, let's move on. And
But we're not ready.
We're not ready. We still love what we love. And
Yeah.
I love the Dos Equis, man. I think he's wonderful.
Those commercials were so
Oh, yeah.
great.
So witty. So witty.
And memes
Oh, yeah.
of the I don't always. That
Totally.
became such a thing that when they did that weird commercial of him going away somewhere.
Oh, yeah, he went to Mars. I think he took
Oh,
off to
that's
Mars.
right.
He
Yeah,
took off to Mars.
I was like, why?
Why? Yes, that's right. It's too far, and I love him too much. Come back. you
The
know?
Yeah.
the pitchman thing is interesting because it can be so great for companies. Spuds McKenzie, the most interesting man in the world. It can be really great, but then when they fail is one of the things where you go. I mean, even ones that were successful.
The Geico Caveman? Is that what you're thinking of?
That was hugely successful.
Was it?
Hugely
So
successful.
weird.
That was one of the most successful ad campaigns of the 90s, and it led to a TV series. It was so successful, a failed TV series, but the ad campaign, and then they brought it back after the TV series failed, and it was successful again. But then you have, for instance, like a pitchman like Bill Cosby, who was very successful with Coca-Cola until New Coke. He lost his credibility because of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's true. But the other thing you get into sometimes is when you hang your hat on a spokesman, like a really high-profile spokesman, and something happens to that spokesman, like Bill Cosby,
Yeah.
or like I think it was Alexander Keith had a problem.
Yeah.
That was not good.
No.
Then you've got
Jared from Subway.
Yeah,
They've
absolutely.
had to, not only have they had
Yep.
to step away, they've had to scrub his existence
Yeah.
from, with Cosby only recently has Coke had to really distance themselves from his former pitch.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he had already,
Jello's in a bad way.
he had already, he had fallen from grace with Coke in 1985 because he had pitched New Coke, and I love New Coke so much. And then
Yeah.
when it wasn't embraced, it was they had to also drop him as part of that, not just change the product. That's where Max Headroom came from. Then a beloved pitchman because he wasn't real.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that? Have you ever had? Oh, here's a recent example. McDonald's tried to rebrand the Hamburglar. Remember that?
Yeah, they gave him like a tracksuit.
And they-
When clearly the Hamburglar is a more formal kind of criminal.
I think I tried to block that out,
Yeah.
I don't really remember that. So
It was a weird.
yeah.
They tried to get an actual person, and they called him the hipster Hamburglar or whatever.
Right.
And that failed within.
It's creepy on
within
so many
weeks.
levels.
It failed within weeks.
Filled within one syllable. Yeah, that's not good.
So
Well, it's funny because, trying to breathe new life into a brand, that's a really tricky proposition. I'm trying to figure out who's done it well. I mean, the Glad man just sort of keeps reappearing in different forms. I think he's like
Yeah.
immortal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Gordon's Fisherman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever done that? Have you ever worked on a brand where all signs pointed to this is great, and then now looking back 5 years later or so, you go, "Oh, what were we thinking? That wasn't a good idea."
I'd like to think I caught it before 5 years. But no, I can't think of one that works that way. I have had the wonderful fortune of working on a long-term property that's done really well, and that's the Goodyear / now Fountain Tire guy, the bald, funny guy,
Yeah.
who's wonderful in radio and wonderful in television. But he has been a property for that brand for, I'd say, over 20 years. So that's one really long-standing one that's worked well. And what's the other one for the throat? Tastes awful, but it works. Remember that
Buckley's.
one? Buckley's. Frank Buckley was
Yeah.
their representative for a long time. So I think those are two that lasted a long time that did really well. But
Talk about a great campaign, though.
Yeah.
Buckley's. It tastes awful, but it works.
Yeah. Love that bravery. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's taking a chance, and they really got away with it. And I've taken Buckley's before because of that. I'm like, okay, so I know going in it's going to taste terrible, but they wouldn't. If it didn't work, they would have to change something.
Yeah, and it's remarkably
you
brave.
buy it.
Yeah, to take
Yeah.
something that's just awful about your product
Yeah.
and shine a light on it and go, this is why you should be buying it.
Yeah.
It's like there's this campaign for this hotel in Amsterdam. It's a flea-ridden, bag, and it's horrible. And they've celebrated and put it on its whole creative platform is it's completely cheap. That's what it's all about. That's why you're coming there. So it's awful, but it's cheap. And the campaigns, the place is filled, and the campaign wins awards every year. So it's sometimes making your greatest weakness your strength is a brilliant creative strategy.
They don't have it anymore, but there used to be an ad for the ads for Jägermeister.
Oh, yeah.
Used to have a guy holding the shot glass, just making a pained look on his face, like, "Ugh," and it just said so smooth. That
yeah.
was what but the guy had a
It's
look on his
disgusting.
face like, this is disgusting.
That resurrected that brand, that whole campaign. It was going nowhere, and it put
Yeah.
it back on the map. It was almost like the Buckley's thing. It tastes awful. You should be drinking it.
Yeah.
Listener Ian says, do men portray men in commercials as being moronic because they know the target audiences are women, and most women find it humorous seeing the man that way?
I don't know. That's a funny thing to me. I've written comedic pieces where I've had the woman be the star of the comedy piece, and I've been told by people, "Oh, they're just not funny in that role." So I don't know if people think it's funnier putting a guy in a funny role. Like I don't think any advertiser goes out there trying to deliberately alienate a target group.
Right.
But maybe it's sort of this misguidedness that.
Because, and I think it's also the fact that gender stereotyping and stuff like that is much slower evolving in advertising and in television and stuff like that, right? I don't know that many women that go, yeah, men are dumb, you
Yeah,
know?
no.
I want to see that reflected in my commercials.
No.
But I think it's still one of those things where they're like, women do housework and know how to do housework and men don't, which is ridiculous, but one of those societal norms that we just can't seem to shake.
Well, I think about character archetypes too. Like you think about Phil Dunphy, on Modern Family.
Yeah.
He's much beloved. He's a goof.
Yeah.
He does
He's
goofy
not
stuff,
bad, but he's sweet and
kind of love him.
lovable.
Yeah, he's kind of moronic, but in a completely adorable way.
Yeah.
And I actually see a lot of advertising right now sort of patterning themselves after that character because he is so loved.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
We are speaking to Karen Howe. She is a globally recognized creative director, writer, and speaker. We got to take a break. Can you hang out?
Sure. Love
Cool.
to.
We come back. I want to talk to you a little bit more about women in advertising and some of the challenges that they face. A small part of the industry, and yet a huge target audience.
Okay.
Stick around. We're Ward and Al. Canada Talks.
She never ever feel rejected, a little misapprehensive. I said, ooh, she fell in love. What is the feeling taking over? Thinking no one could open the door.
Let's get back to Ward and Al on Canada Talks.
We are speaking to Karen Howe. She is a creative director, writer, and speaker. Been in the advertising industry, one of very few female creative directors. We said in the last segment only 3% of creative directors in the advertising industry are women. A big old industry. But on top of that, so only 3% are creative directors. And the advertising awards for women are declining. Is this a job? I guess the easiest way to say it is this a job that women age out of faster than men do?
I think that's true, but I think the bigger problem is just there's not enough of us in the industry. I sit on the Cannes Advisory Board, and every year we choose the judges that go over to represent Canada on the worldwide stage. And the fact is there's just not enough senior women in those roles to choose from to send over to be parts of the jury. We're watching numbers where every year there's fewer women up on the stage picking up the awards, and I think it's just because we're not getting enough women into the business and staying in the business. So I think that's probably where the biggest problem is getting enough into it and propelling them forward to that corner office, making sure they've got the mentoring they need to get into those senior roles.
Do you know what's interesting? That is, I think, part of the problem with women in comedy. And, we talk all the time in comedic circles about kind of women getting a fair shake and it being more of a it's still kind of a boys' club in a man's world. And I think part of it is when young women come in for a long time, and in Toronto, I think this is getting better. I can't speak for other parts of Canada or the U.S. because obviously I'm based here. But I think for a long time, women were taught that another woman was their competition. So young women coming in weren't embraced, weren't mentored, weren't made to feel a part of the community, because the women who stayed in it, you kind of had a Teflon skin, you earned your way in. And so now that I feel like that's changing a bit, but then also, to be honest, it is easier for a man when he gets older to go on the road, because women, have kids and traditionally are the ones who stay home with them. And so I think while it is changing in comedy, there has been when women first arrive, they get pushed out a little bit. Yeah. Or if they stay in, it does become harder. And they're also, the view of them is different. So I have a friend who was told, listen, you're in your 40s now and audiences don't want to hear from women in their 40s. And which I think is ridiculous. But so I think it's interesting that if there was, there's a retention problem for women in comedy that maybe is similar.
Maybe I'm the lucky exception, but I will say in advertising, I've had incredible mentors who are female, and I've had nothing but supportive women around me. But I think we deliberately networked with each other. Right. I will tell you that my last boss that I worked with for almost 20 years, named Jill King, she was incredibly supportive. We made sure we were each other's wingmen in every possible way. So I like to think that women are like that versus viewing each other as competition. I will also say, for me personally, what allowed me to propel my career forward is I had the kind of husband that was cool with being the classroom parent and being the one picking up the kids from school when I couldn't. So I think who you choose as a life partner can make a huge difference in what your career goals are. Randy never fussed about the fact that I had to be on the road. One time I was on the road like 3 months, and he was like, "Great, that's fine, whatever. The kids are looked after." But that's a rarity in a spouse, I think.
Yeah. Again, I only know one or two women that have that in the comedy world. Although, to be fair, it's a challenge for anyone to be married to a comedian, not just men.
But it's interesting you say that about the timing and all that. A lot of people assume, because of what I do for a living as a comedian and radio host, people always go, "Oh, so your wife spending all the time at home with the kids and everything like that?" And I go, we actually have to balance it because she works the long hours as well. And I don't go on the road very often as a comic anymore. It's rare these days. But, we have to make it work in the fact that sometimes I have to make an appearance, or I have to go on the road, but a lot of times it's, we're lucky that we're off the air at 4:00 because she has long, demanding hours. Advertising we were talking earlier on the show about you are what you do these days, and you bury yourself in your work. It's a round the clock job sometimes. People don't realize that the president of insert corporation here is going to be calling the advertising people at 11:00 at night because at the last minute they decided they want the person in the commercial to be blonde.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We have the parallels between the two careers are true. It isn't 9 to 5. The hours are incredibly long. And I also think that you're never off the clock because we're culture vultures. We've got to know what's going on. You've got to make sure you've got your finger on the pulse of whatever the heck is going on. So add that to already you're probably working at least a 12-hour day. And I don't know almost any advertising folks that have the weekend off. It kind of spills right into the weekend. But it's a great job. We love it, or we wouldn't be doing it. But you're right. It isn't 9 to 5 at all. And there is a lot of travel as well. When you're shooting, you're out of town or recording, there's lots of that. So you really do have to have the spouse that can sort of deal with it. Now,
Al was talking about women in comedy. We've been talking about women in advertising. And we are talking to Karen Howe. She is a creative director, writer, and speaker. When I said earlier, that surprises me that a small percentage of women, 3%, are creative directors. As I said, the audience for advertising when it comes to women is huge. We've said before on this show, it's amazing so few women are directors in Hollywood, because 51% of the people that buy movie tickets are women. You know, what is it that's keeping? Is it men keeping women out of advertising? What is it that's doing it? What is it? Are they not as likely to go into it? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a great question. And, there's this conference that started in New York called the 3% Conference. And it's all about this exact subject is why is this happening? What can we do about it to fix it? I guess the one thing I want to make sure, I go to a lot of portfolio shows where you see the portfolios of kids coming in and just try to give them advice on their portfolio, life advice if they want it or not. But the one thing I always try to impart to every woman I know is that ambition is not a dirty word. It's so important. If you have that goal, then aim towards it, do everything you can to get there. And, you're going to hit pitfalls, everybody does, but don't be discouraged by it. But I wonder sometimes if women are afraid to be completely ambitious, like to just wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah, I think, and this goes back to we still... we are still subtly given ideas as we grow up about what girls are supposed to be, what boys are supposed to be, right? And we're still kind of trying to shake off those shackles. And I think there is something about a woman who goes, no, I know what I want and I'm going to go for it, that people go, oh, well, that's not very feminine. And which, depending on how aware you are of that, can affect women.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's funny. I was thinking back to advertising. There's a lot of soft stereotyping. I call it soft stereotyping that goes on in commercials. Sort of arcing back to something you talked about a minute ago, which is, I think, and it's something I talk about when I'm out, speaking to people about Cannes, the award-winning work out of Cannes, is you've got to do what I call mindful creation. A lot of times, as soon as someone, a creative team puts a couple in a car in a scene in a television commercial, it's always the guy driving the car.
The man's driving, yeah.
And the woman's not. Or if it's a couple and it's a scene in a kitchen and someone's sitting at the kitchen table and someone's bringing the food over to the table, it's always the woman. And I don't think it's deliberate. I honestly think it's unconscious. People just don't think, you know what, we've got to think about every signal we're sending with, every frame of film. Although film almost doesn't exist anymore, but you know what I mean?
No, it's these subconscious things that we don't realize we've sucked up over the years that then we put back out there. And you're right. I don't think it's a conscious, obviously the man would drive. It's just that this is what I've always seen. This is what's coming out. And if you don't take that minute to go, wait, why did I put the man?
Yeah. It's like the
maybe that man can't even drive. What is he doing behind the wheel?
Maybe he'd be a better backseat driver.
Right.
But I think we do what I call social shorthand. We just sort of automatically project something without taking a moment to go, is that the right thing to be doing? So I think there's a whole bunch of little things we should be doing, definitely along the way, to represent women better or represent men more correctly in advertising.
I remember
the thing, it's both genders.
Well, I remember telling my wife one day about it. You know what? This is part of that where I'm learning. Because I remember telling my wife one day, what's with all the buffoons, the dad buffoons and all these commercials? No wonder people practically give me a medal when I change a diaper. Commercials have made dads out to be idiots, right? And my wife said, let's watch a bunch of commercials and see that the women aren't being insulted, but just watch them. And she pointed out to me all the gender roles that still exist. The women aren't being insulted. They weren't being shown as idiots or anything. But she said, here's a commercial now about a laundry detergent, and notice that the dad comes in covered in the dirty shirt after having thrown the football around with the kids.
Yeah.
And the mom's cleaning it. And is like, oh. It's like, here's a commercial about dinner's just getting done. Someone's doing the dishes. Mom's doing the dishes. Right? Here's a commercial about somebody getting something nice. The man is giving the gift to the woman. And she went, that's where you see it. She said, yeah, men are shown as dumb on a commercial every once in a while. She goes, but women are still stuck in the exact same roles in these commercials.
Yeah, I think the time you really see the barrage of men being goofs is around Father's Day every year. They do the Father's Day commercials, and they're patting men on the backs for actually being, thinking to read your child a book before they go to sleep. It's like, come on, this is normal behavior. Like, if a mom was doing this, she wouldn't pat them on the back. So I do think there's some talking down that goes on when it comes to guys, but definitely Father's Day is like the apex of it.
Can you?
Oh, no, I was just going to say it's really interesting because growing up in my house, things were very, my parents are very 50-50. And it's interesting because I didn't know until commercials and then being at school that grocery shopping was a mom job. Because my dad was 100% the grocery shopper. Like,
Yeah.
he had a system. There was the idea of my mom. And
Sounds
my
like
mom
your
gets
dad.
mad when I say this, but it's true. Like, growing up, the idea of, sure, she did it sometimes. But it was like my dad made a chart of the store.
I think I married your dad.
He he had like, and there was certain directions, and then anyway, there was a whole big thing, and so this idea of, and then in commercials it would always be the woman at the grocery
Yeah.
store, and then my friends would be like, "Your dad grocery shops," and I was like, "I didn't know that was a mom job,"
Yeah.
you know, and so it's interesting where stereotyping comes in, and how that happens, you know, but yeah, in our house. Please.
Yeah, my husband has like the grid of whatever's on sale, and I'm eclipsed by his shopping abilities when it comes to groceries.
Yeah.
I don't even hold a candle
Even
to
now,
it.
my dad sometimes goes to the grocery store like 12 times a week. And he has different grocery stores that he likes different products at. So he's not just going to go to one grocery store. That's crazy.
I'm hoping this is the new world order for every woman. This is
It's
sounding
nice.
great.
Yeah.
Listener Heather says on Breaking Bad, Marie drove Hank everywhere, and they noticed it. They noticed that the woman was driving because it stood out to them.
That's interesting.
That's great. Oh, yeah, I never noticed that. But that's awesome.
Now, let me ask you this. We got to let you go here, but I'm sure we could talk forever. I could say, tell me an ad campaign that you didn't work on that impressed you, and we could talk about that all day. But would you tell us one that maybe is a famous one that you look at and you go, that was terrible? Like a bad one. You go, like I pointed to the Hamburglar thing. I remember when they came out with the reboot of the Hamburglar, Al and I mocked it. We went,
Real guy hamburger.
And
It's a terrible idea.
It was a terrible
It's
idea.
embarrassing.
I'm going to tell you one, and you're not going to believe it, that I don't love, and it was really famous, and it's really timed to what we're talking about. It's for Dove, the Dove Beauty Evolution campaign that started 10 years ago. I loved where they redid this woman in real time. You saw her makeup going on, and it made the point that about real beauty. There was a follow-up to it where they had a blind sketch artist draw women based on how they were describing themselves.
Yeah.
And he drew them as each of the net takeaway was each woman saw themselves as average, but he saw them as beautiful. And I thought, oh, come on, because nobody runs around going, my guys are glowing and my lips are fulsome. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We all go, yeah, I'm okay looking. So
Yeah.
I don't think it was a big insight, and I actually think it kind of demeaned women in a perverse way.
But look how this man sees you,
Yeah,
women.
He sees you beautiful.
Yeah. He doesn't think you need makeup. No one cares what he thinks.
That's right.
Yeah, here's a big,
me-
that's a good one.
Yeah, so I felt like I was really kind of on the opposite side of the equation in that one. I don't love it. I don't love a lot of those campaigns.
I'll tell you one that I would appreciate if you could get on because I hate everything they do, and that is Captain Morgan.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Morgan.
Everything they do.
What-
Are
no,
you going to tunnel through the washing machine to get away from your wife to meet the boys at the bar? Okay, Captain Morgan.
I laughed because Brett just stood up and put his leg out like that,
Yeah.
putting his leg on the
Yeah.
barrel thing.
I'll set you on
When-
fire.
You know,
Right as you did that, he looked up. and-
Every Captain Morgan commercial is, aren't girlfriends and wives the worst? Let's all go and have a drink, just the boys.
Can we isolate that audio and send it to Captain Morgan?
that's right.
Because
that's
they'll
right.
use that.
That
They'll use Al
replication.
saying that.
Listen, I can't even get past the guy's hat. You know,
No, I know.
It's bad. It's horrifying.
It's very big.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's very big.
Bad idea.
I told a friend of mine who works, a friend of ours who works in advertising, she was working on McDonald's, and I came up with this great pitchman idea, and she won't run with it. And I said, it's got to be a guy who looks like Don Draper, get a retro-looking 60s suit kind of guy or whatever. And at the end of every McDonald's commercial, no matter what happens, all it does is it pans over to him, he turns the camera and goes, ha ha, McDonald's. With just a big dumb grin. Yeah. And I said, if you do that in enough commercials, just over, he's a real charming looking guy, but real like tailored suit, looking real nice, you know, it just pans over and he's standing there like Rod Serling and just end the commercial with, ha ha, McDonald's.
See, you know where what worked was the Bud Light guy. Remember the guy who jumped out of the Life Boy that looked like the guy from Happy Love Boat. The guy looked from Love Boat.
Oh, yeah.
They finished every commercial with him jumping out of a Life Boy. Like that was how they finished every commercial. And it was great. It was funny.
See?
See, there's potential
No, see
there.
how she had a good idea, but you had a bad one?
Okay, well they're almost good together.
Mine's a good idea. What's wrong with it?
Just
So-
a
McDonald's.
little massaging.
listen, if you want to see more from Karen Howe and what she does and her good ideas, you can go to KarenHoweCreative.com.
And read her articles and her blogs. They're really, really interesting. So, which is why I wanted to bring you on here in the first place.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
And I guess we'll come back and wrap up the day.
Absolutely. You're listening to Ward Now, Channel 167, Canada Talks.
Canada Talks.
Are you ready? Hi, this is Allison Dorr from the Ward Now Show. Coming up on Thursday, former Toronto Mayor, current head of WWF Canada, David Miller will be here. Don't miss it, 1 p.m. Eastern.